What's up guys, welcome back to another video. I am GadgetsJon and today we're going to be looking at the photo capabilities of the new iPhone 12 Pro, which I have here, which also is covered in the case from our sponsor of this video, Spec, who have a whole range of cases for the iPhone 12, the iPhone 12 mini, the iPhone 12 Pro and the Pro Max. And I really love these cases. You've got a whole range. So this one has the Armor Cloud Presidio 2 on it, which has a dual layer. So if you drop your phone, it has air cushions. It's almost like an airbag for your phone if you drop it. When you've got the clear case here, which I kind of prefer a bit because painstakingly I have to choose between the color of my phone. You don't want the gold one because gold's gold, but we've gone for the blue one here and you don't want to cover that up with a case if you've taken time to choose the color, right? So you've got a perfect clear one here which stops from discoloration as it gets older as well. They've also got a grip version for the Presidio cases which obviously has grip on it, which is a little bit better if you've got slippery hands or if you're out taking pictures like I will be in this video. And they've got a Pro case as well, which has a soft touch finish. So if you want something that's a little bit silkier, a little bit more premium, then they've got the Presidio 2 Pro case as well. And one of the coolest things about Specs cases is they come covered in microband technology, which is antimicrobial. Okay, so I'm back in, out from the cold. It is freezing at the moment. But like you saw there, I had some time with the iPhone 12 Pro. I'd actually played with it beforehand, which is kind of the reason why we wanted to make this video, because I have a slightly different take as a photographer on this device. I think a lot of people have ranted and raved about the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and that's understandable because it is the newest and the biggest and best iPhone, as Apple have said. But I have a slightly different take on it. So let's just jump into my reasons for why I think what I think and talk about the iPhone 12 Pro's camera. Firstly, as you know, the iPhone 12 Pro has a triple camera setup. All of them are 12 megapixels. There are 3 different focal lengths equivalent. So the main camera is a 26mm focal length equivalent. The telephoto camera is a 2x zoom, which offers a 52mm focal length equivalent. And the ultra wide is, I think, 13mm equivalent, which gives you a 120-degree field of view. So you get super ultra wide with that third camera. It also has a LiDAR sensor, which is an interesting addition. Companies have been using lasers and LiDAR technology for quite a while to help with autofocus on phones, particularly in the dark, because LiDAR doesn't need light to actually detect where objects are. It sends out beams or pulses of light, and then the time of flight is referring to the amount of time it takes for that light beam to get back to the sensor. So in actual total darkness, the phone can still focus, which is really cool using that technology. The reason why I like the iPhone 12 Pro's camera is you've got some nice options for your photography. I don't really rate the ultra wide camera though. For me, the quality isn't amazing. But looking at it compared to the iPhone 11 Pro, it does seem like they've sorted out some corner sharpness issues, which I did notice before. It was a lot softer in the previous device, whereas this one feels like you've got a much more detail in the corners of the frames, which I think is definitely an improvement for the ultra-wide camera. For the main camera, I don't think there's, for me, a huge difference between this one and the iPhone 11 Pro Max, or even with the iPhone 12 Pro Max. The main cameras, they do a good job. Like, I'm not saying they're bad, I'm just saying there's not a huge improvement, and for me, wouldn't be a reason to upgrade from the previous iPhone 11 Pro if you have it, or the iPhone 11 Pro Max. If you're choosing between the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 12 Pro Max though, the thing you are getting is a physically larger sensor on that main one. The main camera on the iPhone 12 Pro Max has a physically larger sensor, which means the pixels themselves are larger and they have much better light gathering capabilities. So you'll really see the difference with this in low light. Well, at least on paper, that's where you should see the difference. Also, the main camera of the iPhone 12 Pro Max has sensor shift image stabilization, whereas the cameras on the 12 Pro have optical image stabilization. So that's in the lens itself. On the 12 Pro Max, you get sensor shift. So you have the algorithms and the gyroscopes in the camera and in the software can tell where the camera is. It can tell how the sensor's moving. It compensates for shake as you're holding the device as well. So if you're taking pictures in low light and even with video, you're going to get much smoother and stabler shots. You're going to have less motion blur if you're, moving up and down slightly, especially if you're shooting in the cold like we were. With the 12 Pro Max, you're going to have that advantage over the 12 Pro. But I don't think that's a huge thing. And I think if you're looking at it side by side, very few people, unless you're pixel peeping, are really going to see the difference between those two cameras. The other thing to note is that the telephoto camera on the 12 Pro gives you an equivalent focal length of 52mm, like I said, but with the 12 Pro Max, you've got 65mm on equivalent as you focus 2.5 times with that zoom. Personally, I prefer having 50mm as an equivalent focal length. I think it's a lot more versatile, especially for the types of stuff that I shoot. If you're around, like, you know, walking around the streets, if you want to do a bit of portrait stuff and some detail stuff, I think 52mm is a nice working length to work with. But some people will prefer the 65mm that you get with the iPhone 12 Pro Max. I just think that for portraits and for everyday stuff, 52mm is a bit more flexible. The reason why I prefer that, though, to the main camera, which, you know, that's where you're getting the larger pixels and the brightest lens on the main camera, which is, I think, f1.6 versus f2 on the telephoto, is when you take pictures with a wide angle camera at 26mm, portraits are much less flattering at that focal length, especially if you're close to someone, because the closer you get, the more distorted their face is going to be and their features will be wider than they usually would appear, at least to our eyes. So if you're taking portraits, I definitely recommend switching to the telephoto camera, which is what I did when I was taking pictures of Dwayne, because I think that looks a lot more flattering. Things, to my eye, are they're a little bit more how I see them. So you're not getting that distortion that you'd get if you had a wide angle camera really close up to someone's face, which I don't think looks particularly attractive, and most people wouldn't like seeing themselves that way with their, you know, their face all wide and puffy, or their head much wider than it usually is. Now, if you switch over to the front-facing camera of the iPhone 12 Pro, again, you have a dual sensor 12 megapixel offering there with an f2.2 lens. It's not the brightest, but it's bright enough, especially for low light, and it's very wide. Offers 23mm equivalent field of view, which is great for selfies, especially if you've got a couple of friends in, like I did in my shots with Dwayne and Craig. It's enough to get your friends in the shot. It's nothing crazy, but it'll definitely do the job. You've got some extra features there as well. So you've also got portrait mode, which you have on the main camera set up on the back, but you also have portrait mode on the front-facing camera as well, and that will give you, you know, extra blur around the back. It actually has a cool little feature where you can manipulate the depth, by software, manipulate how the depth looks when you're taking a picture of yourself. So if you want to get rid of the background blur, you can adjust that right down. It represents it in aperture, but it doesn't actually change the aperture. It's all done in software. But yeah, you can open up the aperture, blur out the background really like kind of crazy, so it almost looks a bit too fake for me. I don't really like it at maximum. I think around 3.5 works quite well. It's a subtle, much more subtle effect and looks good. You still lose the background and keep more focus on your face. I think that works quite well. I'm not a massive fan of selfie cameras personally, but if you are into them, I think the iPhone 12 Pro's selfie camera does a really good job of taking shots. I think it's kind of something that I think Apple have almost cornered the market on. Apple and Google Pixel seem to really do selfie cameras amazingly well, much better than most of the competition. I think a lot of the competition do too much software processing, so people end up looking either too smooth or the colors are a bit off, whereas I think the iPhone 12 Pro does a really good job of selfies. So let's wrap this up. I think I've covered most of my thoughts about the iPhone 12 Pro. Actually, before we do that, I actually want to mention that Spec, the guys sponsoring this video, have AirPod cases as well, which I really love. I'm not the biggest fan of the shinier ones, but the slightly rubberized, smoother, silky finish ones are my preference because I think they're a bit more resistant to scratches and fingerprints. But yeah, they do really cool AirPod cases as well. We'll put those in the description area so you can check those out if you have AirPods. They do them for the Pro versions as well as the normal AirPods. But yeah, my conclusion on the iPhone 12 Pro's camera. Now, if you're choosing from the new iPhone 12 range, I think there's a lot of reasons to go for different devices. I think the 12 almost doesn't count. I don't think there's enough reason to go for the 12. If you're going to go for the 12, you might as well get the 12 Pro, I think, because you're not saving that much money. And if you're trying to save money, then you might as well get the Mini. I think the Mini stands out and the Max stands out. The Pro is the one that I think some people will overlook. If they're going to spend a bit more money, they're going to go for the Max. But we actually prefer the iPhone 12 Pro because of the balance between size, camera capability, function, battery life. I think the iPhone 12 Pro offers the best all-round experience, and for me as a photographer, I think the camera differences between the 12 and the 12 Pro Max, the 12 Pro and the 12 Pro Max, the camera differences aren't huge enough for me to justify carrying that much larger a device and spending that much more money on it. I don't think, for me, you get that much more benefit for having a slightly larger sensor, the sensor shift image stabilization. For me, those aren't big enough features in use anyway, not to my eye, to justify going for the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Unless you really want a large screen and you want the bigger battery, then obviously the iPhone 12 Pro Max is for you. But if you just want a really solid camera experience that takes great photos consistently, the video is really good on it as well, which we didn't really talk about that much, but like I said, this is from a photographer's perspective. I think the iPhone 12 Pro is a very, very solid device. It's not a huge upgrade from the iPhone 11 Pro, but it is a big upgrade if you're still on the iPhone 10 or any of the, I still have friends and family on the iPhone 6. So for those guys with the slightly older generation devices, this is a big upgrade and you will absolutely love what you get from the iPhone 12 Pro. But yeah, that is it from me and the iPhone 12 Pro from a photography perspective. If you have any comments or questions, if there's anything I didn't cover in this video that you want to know a bit more about, then put that in the comment section. And if you had any questions about specs cases, we'll put all of that information down in the description area. Like I mentioned, Spec have a wide range of products for a range of different needs. But in terms of drop protection, Spec have you covered. They will not let you down. So make sure you check those guys out as well. But yeah, subscribe. Hit that notification bell as well so you're one of the first to know when we put up a new video on this channel. But in the meantime, I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.